Hey everyone, it's Gavin from Team Lechuga. We just got back from the Universus Buffalo Regional. Didn't do super well in the main event. I was kind of just taking Innsmouth for fun, anyways. But I've had this Tournelouse retro deck profile cooked up since Louisville, but I've been tied up in top cuts for the day two since Louisville and Atlanta. So I haven't been able to enter the retro events, but now I was able to actually showcase this deck off, and to my surprise, ended up getting first place. And I wanted to show off this deck because it's a pretty good testament to the fact that, like, if you're scared about approaching retro, you think, oh god, I'm gonna have to, read all these retro cards, which you might have to. I did have to do that, but for the purposes of my deck building, you really didn't have to read that many cards. I've just got my hero stuff that's been rotated along with Tournelouse because Seventh Cross is a really cool set. So it is a pretty beginner friendly deck profile. Obviously, it could be a little more optimized with the retro good cards, but I don't really know what those are at the moment for the most part, other than like reading Tournelouse's kit and being like, okay, well, these cards are good. So I feel like this is a pretty good stepping stone for anybody trying to get into the game or into the format specifically. So I wanted to go ahead and show that off for you guys because I did get that first place finish. So we're on the Earth symbol. We've, of course, got the 3 copies of Tournelouse 1 in the main deck other than our actual character, and I am playing the 4 Tournelouses. I did one time get into a point where the 4th one did actually matter, but for the most part, I think you could be fine just playing 3 if you wanted more consistency, but this guy being a 0 mid breaker 1 really just set it up for me to play them in the main. And because of the other copies of Tournelouse in the main, we are playing a 57 card deck, since we start with those out of the deck. When we were playing 3 City Rampage, this is just one, like, normally I'm going to play 4 of it, but whenever we're playing a 57 card deck, and then I've got these Tournelouses as well that aren't really part of my attack string, I just decided to play 3, and it worked out really well. You can do a really cool thing where you block with a City Rampage and then use your reversal that is the 5 diff, and it'll have that +1/+1 to it, which is pretty cool. Then we've got 4 copies of Netherstorm and 4 copies of Crusader's Oath. I'm not going to bore most of the standard players here who don't know what these cards do, but the big thing about it is that these are both 5 diffs that are rampageable, I guess you could say. They have a very important keyword for this deck called Gauge, which says basically when they deal the damage equal to this gauge rating, you get to build a copy of your character, I think that shares your name, so it could be Tournelouse 1 or 2, from your deck or discard pile. So the whole deck is based around pumping damage, trying to not get blocked. Tournelouse 1 makes, once per turn, one of your gauge moves a throw. So you can pump Netherstorm up to 11 and make sure that it'll deal, or you pump Crusader's Oath to 9. And then whenever you build a character, your character likes having a bunch of characters. When you build or when your character leaves, they flip a foundation. So it's really just about hitting those gauge triggers and building a bunch of your characters and having a bunch of your characters leave the stage. These are super strong. These are the only gauges that I can play on Rampage, but I really didn't find myself needing more. So pretty good. And you'll see another card that like gives gauge in the future. Then we've got 4 Back Alley Haymaker. Playing this card in a Rampage deck just feels amazing. This card was already a 4 diff because you can build in a 0, but spoiler alert, there's a really good 0 that you can build in, a few actually, in the retro format. This card is just about as good as you would expect. Definitely puts the resource game in your favor, no matter how you play it. Another card banned from Standard, Titan Cliff. We've only got it as a 3 of here because like drawing multiples of it isn't crazy. We are in a 57 card deck, so I think if you played 4, you would end up seeing it. And it's not really like a turn 2 card unless you are like forced into a point where you have to like rampage and play a bunch of attacks. And then even then, we're not playing too many 6 checks. The big cool thing that this card can do is it can build your character, and your character loves to be built. So huge card there. And then we've got 3 copies of Hardened Chop. This again, this is kind of like the last filler attack. I was expecting that there'd be a lot of decks that are trying to chain block in retro, and Honestly, today it was either like they're blocking a little, or they're playing like such an aggro deck that like blocking really isn't a big thing. Um, and then like it's one of those cards that only really offensively has some huge merit to it whenever you're like attacking a bunch of times. You have those face downs that you can pop for extra value. But so I think if you are looking to go into retro deeper, this is the one that you would cut for a retro attack that's really strong. But definitely not bad. That one breaker block is really nice. Our one 3 diff is to a coordinated effort. This card has a 6 check here, so we can build this in with Titan Cliff. It's got an unbelievable deadlock. It's banned in standard for pretty much as long as I've been playing the game, at least. We've got 4 copies of Evil Eye. This is one of the more powerful cards for retro. This is a playable while committed speed reset to printed, which is just massive. But it also says just enhance, remove a character from your card pool or your hand to draw a card. So if you have this up on a kill turn, you're going to draw like probably 3 or 4 cards over the course of a turn. This card is just incredible. I would probably play like 10 of it if I could, just one of those cards. A little bit of a silly card here, Any Means Necessary. This is one of those like cool cards. Like every time people saw it in my deck list, they'd be like, well, let me read your character again. You don't discard on face. And it's like, no, I don't. But we're playing like One with Nature, Snack Time, Titan Cliff, and then Crusader's Oath. They all discard. I think you probably like could take this to a 2 or a 3 of, and I wouldn't bat an eye. I did brick on it one time, but it honestly, it would have been any foundation and I would have bricked, so it wasn't really a problem to me. It's going to be very few and far between that you won't see any way to discard this card and just draw a card. But when you do become like a 9 or 10 hander or something like that, because the Titan Cliff drew you into extra cards, or your One with Natures and your Snack Times weren't a cost, you'll see why this card is so strong. We've got 2 copies of One with Nature. I don't know, this probably could have been a 3 or a 4 of. This card puts in a ton of work. It seemed like the average retro deck that I was facing off against today wasn't super about chain blocking, so just like even activating this one time and getting the extra damage trigger for basically the +2 speed, +1 damage was enough to put them in awkward situations. So maybe this should just be a 3 or a 4 of. This card felt really, really good. Another card, now moving on to our 1-diffs that felt incredible, of course, is A Moment of Rest. I know this card is like almost like unobtainium, but I just like sat on the Rochester waiting list for a really long time. You get to give your attack gauge by flipping this card, which gauge equals its printed damage in this case. So pretty much in this deck, at least, it's going to be the gauge of the card already, because Crusader's Oath and Netherstorm have 5 and 6 respectively. But you can give any attack gauge in this deck. You can then make it a throw with your character. Also, if you block with a character, in this case that would be like Tournelouse 2, you have a 0 mid block, breaker 1, build down, and then they flip a card. This becomes Desperate Plea. This card is incredible, and I would honestly, if I were you, I would put myself on the waitlist for this card on Rochester CCG as well, because if you play retro, there's going to be some sort of character stacking thing that you might want to try, and you'll be like, oh, but I don't have Moment of Rests. You should go ahead and get these. Like, it's a super crazy card. Then on to 3 copies of Snack Time. Again, maybe this should have been a 4 of. This card feels really good in a similar way. It's just a 1-diff version of the One with Nature, but like actually interrupts their board a little bit. Which isn't super crazy because they're going to have a bunch of flip foundations, so they'll probably just commit those. But, they use them to pass checks. If any deck wants to go into Deadlock and you have these up, you're going to be able to draw even more cards. I played against a Recovery Girl, and if the games were going on longer than they were, I probably would have used one of these a lot more than I would have. And then we've got 1 copy of Monster Aggression. This was... I'm not even sure. This was probably just I need a 60th card, and this card is really good. You can pop your used Hell's Reaches, which you'll see in a second, and then rebuild them in with Haymaker, but this is just more stats, so sounds good to me. One of the most legendary zero diffs, for at least as long as I've been playing standard, is that it can be fixed. Why is this card a 1 high block? If they stun you, you flip it playable while committed to build the top card of your deck, basically saying if you get stunned, you get a resource back, but it's a permanent resource. So a lot of decks, like if you ever have like 2 of these up on board, they'll just be like, I'm not stunning you for the rest of the game. And that's a pretty good ability on the zero diff. Then 4 copies of Hell's Reach. This is a very simple card for all my standard players. It is just playable while committed, flip to ready this card. So this is a zero diff that is 2 foundations, which is pretty good whenever you have a Back Alley Haymaker in your deck. 2 copies of number 10 Pro Hero. There's probably better 6 checks I could play, but I wanted to make Titan Cliff a little less dead. 1 copy of Tight Lipped for some extra damage pump, and 1 copy of Internship with Best Genius to try to flip my opponent's board a little more. Again, you only really do that whenever you're going second and whenever they have face-up foundations, and sometimes your character just flips their entire board. But yeah, I didn't have any problems with the one of. Also, it's just kind of a nothing burger to build off of Back Alley Haymaker, so it doesn't really do anything there. But yeah, that's the Tournelouse deck. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that, and again, I hope if anybody out there is wanting to play retro and finds it to be a little beginner unfriendly, check out some more like 7th Cross characters. I think that set is really cool for like bringing you into the retro format in a super approachable way. But yeah, that'll be it for me, guys. I'll see you next time.